When celebrities, politicians, influencers, sports stars and royalty find themselves in the firing line, whether it's a scandal or a lawsuit, we are going to pre-bunk, debunk, myth-bust, fact-check and interrogate and, of course, answer your questions. This is Fame Under Fire from BBC Sounds with me, Anoushka Mutanda-Dougherty, and we are the place to come for a facts-first approach to those topics dominating the timeline. Don't forget to subscribe to the BBC Sounds YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. But before we jump in, just a warning. This programme does contain descriptions of rape and sexual assault. And if you've got a question, you can send it to me on social media or you can message us on our WhatsApp number on +44 330 678 1114. That's +44 330 678 1114. Coming up today, we have some very serious allegations of sex trafficking, sexual battery, rape and false imprisonment. I'm not talking about Diddy, but another legendary rapper. Then we have Nicki Minaj beefing people on the timeline again. And you're saying, Anoushka, what's new? She does this all the time. But actually, this latest spat with SZA reveals some really interesting facts about the music industry, and perhaps your favourite artist isn't as big as they think they are. And then lastly, 3 weeks ago, we brought you the verdict in the Diddy trial. When it was read out in the courtroom, Diddy kept his head down. There wasn't much emotion from him. But afterwards, he got on his knees, he put his head in the chair in front of him, and he began to pray. Today, we'll update you on the sentencing and the prosecution's latest tactics, portraying Cassie and Jane as co-conspirators. What on earth is going on there? Joining me today to help unpack it is our resident criminal defense attorney and my mum's favourite American, Shaun Kent. Hi, Shaun.
Hey, Anoushka, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you. And crisis PR manager, Molly McPherson, joining from just north of Boston. Hi, Molly.
Hello. I hope someday I can be one of your mom's favorites as well.
I'm sure she's got space for two. Now, the first thing I want to talk about today kind of came out of being in New York doing the Diddy trial. While I was there, it was all about Diddy, morning, noon and night. I mean, Shaun, you know that. God, the amount of frantic phone calls you got from me. What does this mean? What's going on? But you get to know the lawyers that are around. You sit next to them in the courtroom, you meet them outside in the lines. And one person I chatted to a lot was Eric Fadali from the Lisa Bloom law firm. He was representing Dawn Rashad and another one of Diddy's accusers. And he brought to my attention another rapper who has just been hit with an amended lawsuit accusing him of assault, battery, sexual battery, sex trafficking, stalking and false imprisonment. Little did I know that very rapper was actually going to turn up at the Diddy trial.
Kanye, why'd you show up today? Is he about to testify?
Now, there are a number of additional allegations in this updated lawsuit filed by Lauren Pisciotta, Kanye's former chief of staff. Before we get into those, we did ask Ye's representatives and lawyers for a response, but haven't heard back yet. His company, Yeezy, did send this statement to USA Today. Lauren Pisciotta's amended complaint is the fourth version she has advanced. Each new revision contradicts the other. Each is more absurd and outlandish than all previous claims combined. Does Ms. Pisciotta actually believe her confabulations? We cannot know, but this breathless new installment of fantasy fiction discredits all past, present and future testimony. The spokesperson added, "The courts are no place to indulge delusions and mental disturbances. We stand ready to annihilate Ms. Pisciotta's tall tales before a jury, an exoneration so inevitable that even she, lost in her fog of fantasy, must surely see it coming." I just want to say what's alleged in this lawsuit contains some really graphic descriptions of rape and sexual assault. We have an allegation of oral rape that Lauren says she suffered at the hands of Kanye during the recording of his Donda album. She alleges that he repeatedly had sex with Yeezy staff members and would record it, literally taking people into the bathroom in the offices and then sending said recordings around to the rest of the office and to Lauren herself. She said she was frequently exposed to acts of anti-Semitism, forcing staff members to draw swastikas and interrogating staff members he suspected were Jewish. After firing her, she says he moved into her building. She then says after she filed her first complaint on June 3rd, 6 days later, swatting began. Now, if you're not familiar with the term, this is when you call local law enforcement and you allege some really horrific crimes going on, kidnap, child sexual abuse. You say it's happening in this house. There is obviously an immediate and very strong response from law enforcement agencies, including homes being raided. She says this has happened to her multiple times. lives in the place where she's been living, and she suspects that it is at the direction of Kanye. Molly, I want to get your initial reaction to hearing that.
Yeah, well, Kanye's notoriety is certainly a part of the brand, and similar to Shaun Combs. So it's not a surprise that when there's one legal action against one, famous, titan in that industry, that that a legal outfit would find a way to have it happen with Kanye as well. It fits the pattern. But also in terms of this pattern, notoriety, it goes both ways. It can help you sell albums, it can help you with your influence. But these legal stories have a way of sticking, certainly because they're followed by the news and they're followed by the public. So it will be interesting to see what happens.
And Shaun, I know reading sort of horrific allegations is somewhat your bread and butter, but hearing that, what was the initial reaction?
I'm old enough to remember that when lawsuits were filed, they were not filed so salacious as they are now, because now they're all reading like tabloid journalism. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but I've been doing this 25 years. Before, we just used to have, and we were taught in law school, when you make a lawsuit, you make it very generic. You don't come out as specific as these lawsuits are. So when I'm reading these now, it's almost like the lawsuits are not written to win. They're written for public opinion, knowing that people are going to be reading them. Specifically, even when and this is more Molly's bread and butter, when I heard the statement back from Kanye, you never used to hear these, we're going to destroy you, you never heard these type of things, or just very generalization. So when I read that lawsuit, and when I read at the beginning of it, it read like the intro to a movie, like the trailer to a movie. Kanye is a misogynist. Kanye is a racist. Kanye is a bad person. You never saw that stuff before in the introductory paragraph to a lawsuit. So to me, it wasn't that I was surprised. I was more surprised on how much that lawsuit was written for other people to read it that aren't court personnel. So that was the shock that I got when I read it, personally.
Here is Eric Fadali from the Bloom Law Firm speaking to me in New York.
So it's a lot of what's really interesting about it is it's a lot of what Mr. West or Ye has tweeted and has admitted. Pretty remarkably shocking, actually. I've represented a lot of alleged victims against very high-profile individuals with large platforms. I have never in my life, or at least in my career, ever seen a defendant sort of tweet out admissions to the allegations. So, for instance, he says he used to, expletive F-word his employees in his office. He actually said that, and that's sort of part of our, the allegations by Ms. Pisciotta. He said that employee P-word hits different. I need the whole office expletive proof. I mean, really sort of graphic admissions. He calls himself a walking Me Too. He says, I'm a big time perv. He talks about how he likes to sleep with his employees in his office. If a CEO don't hug you inappropriately, he's a expletive for homosexual. I mean, just really sort of jarring admissions that really mirror the allegations of Ms. Pisciotta. He describes these hugs in his tweets, that these inappropriate hugs he liked to do with his employees, or he would press himself inappropriately against them without their consent. These are all admissions by Mr. West, public admissions on his X profile or Twitter profile that really mirror a lot of the allegations that Ms. Pisciotta has made. So again, we're sort of in a situation where I really look forward to taking Mr. West's deposition and to confront him with these admissions that really sort of echo what's been alleged by Ms. Pisciotta.
And he speaks about, she alleges that he sent messages, those tweets you just read, and mentions it there as well, having sex with employees, the office being somewhere where you would have sexual or intimate encounters. Has Lauren spoken on what it was like to work there and what the culture was like?
Well, I mean, I can tell you that she no longer works there, as is, that's alleged in the complaint, and that, that's real life. Not only does she not work there, but the aftermath of working for Mr. West, working for Ye, has bringing a lawsuit against Mr. West, has caused her to go into hiding. She is, and I'm not overstating it, she's literally, I'm not allowed to disclose where she lives. She is literally in hiding, afraid, scared, and has basically, deleted pretty much her entire, internet presence, and has just sort of sitting around in hiding, hoping, letting this lawsuit play out. It's really sad, and certainly she has gone through a lot. She is suffering and has been suffering since she began working for Mr. West.
Molly, the accusations are extremely serious, but the online reaction, kind of now with everything Ye does, is, well, it's Kanye, what do you expect? Has he in a way, built the perfect defense against any wrongdoing by saying and doing the unthinkable.
What's interesting about the response, and Shaun pointed this out, that was a legal response that was written for the public, and not just for public consumption, but for public swaying as well with influence. What's interesting is that Kanye's brand of notoriety is always to be kind of off brand, to be outrageous, to say the outrageous things. He always pushes the envelope. But this is a statement for the first time where I feel that Kanye is worried. That Kanye is worried about the charges, significantly the timing of it, coming after Shaun Combs, that to have that legal rebuke, in this statement right off bat, goes against his traditional brand. So it tells me that they are worried there, but his influence is about the outrageous. So now for him to be the appalled person and to attack also the accuser, which is typical from a legal playbook, that happens all the time. But that's new for Kanye, and that's what I find interesting.
From this as well, there's some really interesting legal questions, Shaun. Kanye has said he was bipolar, diagnosed in 2016 after suffering a mental health crisis. Then he said he was misdiagnosed and he's actually autistic. He's faced a backlash over a series of chaotic interviews and severely anti-Semitic social media posts. He's also tweeted that he was molested by his cousin when he was a child, that his children are being sex trafficked by his ex-wife Kim Kardashian, and he used a slur to refer to Jay-Z and Beyonce's very young son. Shaun, is there a legal route for saying my client can't be held responsible for their actions? And if so, could we end up seeing some of these tweets introduced as evidence of that in this court of law?
So that's a two-part question. To answer your first part simply, no. Mental intent, sanity, competency, those are criminal elements. You understand? So if he was facing criminal charges, somebody literally could say Kanye West could not form the mens rea, if you will, the intent to be criminally responsible for his actions. That's what he could be making the argument for in a criminal parlance. You can tell a court, you can tell a jury, I could not form the necessary intent. Look at my tweets. Look at me. I'm nutty. Look at the crazy stuff that I've done. That does not save you from a civil lawsuit. Civilly, he could be sued. Whether you are insane, whether you are competent, does not change the fact that you've actually done something. As far as the tweets will be used in the civil court, not, and that's why the second part of your question, not to show his level of sanity, but to show his level of culpability. So I think those tweets will be used. I think he'll be sitting for a deposition. During his deposition, the civil side will have the right to say, you tweeted this, you tweeted this, you tweeted this, you tweeted this. And he can sit in that deposition all he wants. He could be sitting in a chicken suit. He could be sucking on lollipops, playing in his nose, looking nutty as he wants to. But in the civil parlance, that will be used against him in the deposition to show that he is civilly responsible for what the plaintiff is saying.
It's really interesting. And also we have heard from Kanye how much he enjoys being deposed and says it's the only time he gets to truly be himself. Molly, I can see you nodding there. I mean, yes.
I saw the clip. Certainly that is part of his brand, and he laughs about it, but now this is a serious matter for him. So that's why I think we're seeing shifts in his perception management and reputation management around this case.
The thing that people don't understand, we always say this statement. We always say that criminal charges are harder to prove, which they are, than civil cases. If you look throughout history, which people don't actually ever talk about, what takes down powerful men, powerful women, powerful people are their own depositions. If you watch the Bill Cosby deposition, if you watch the O.J. Simpson deposition, because these depositions, when you're allowed to ask all these questions and you do not have the right to say, I plead the fifth, I'm not answering that. That's what takes people down. Kanye sitting for a deposition is his lawyer's worst nightmare.
And Eric has made very clear to me that he is looking forward to putting a lot of those tweets and a lot of the statements that Kanye has made to him in that deposition, which is happening in August, and we will follow and, of course, keep you updated. Just a reminder, though, Kanye West's representatives have strongly denied all these allegations. Still to come on Fame Under Fire, we'll be bringing you the latest developments ahead of the Diddy sentencing. But first, on X, these two artists have been going back and forth.
I want to do music that I love to do and it makes me happy. And my diehard fans have really understood me and they've held me down. And that's all I can hope for.
My voice is just what it is. I think at my most natural, when I'm not thinking, I sing from like my tummy and I'm loud as hell.
That is the hugely successful female, queen of rap, Nicki Minaj, and SZA, who is leading the game in R&B, who have been rowing on social media. But it brings up some really interesting but perhaps little known facts about the music industry. But before that, Molly, Nicki Minaj. Oh, Nicki. In the past, what shall I say, 5 to 7 years, who hasn't she got at? I remember when she was beefing with Boris Johnson. She's not afraid to get into rows on social media.
Absolutely, because social media will turn any disagreement into a spectacle, and social media loves a spectacle, particularly if there's any type of beef. It's just something that brings the algorithm in. So not only does social media platforms like beefs, but artists can like them as well, because it's not just about influence sometimes. It's just, reputation and what draws people in, and that makes you kind of a bigger artist, increasing your visibility.
And Nicki said all sorts on Twitter. The COVID vaccine enlarges your ball sack. Not true. But when it comes to SZA, in between referring to her as a yodeling fool who needs auto-tune and SZA saying she has declined 2 previous requests to collab with Minaj, some interesting assertions were made about who is a bigger artist. Especially when it comes to filling out an arena. And it's interesting when you start to get into these distinctions, because a lot of the time with Nicki and SZA, who are both really, really at the forefront of the game, it's, well, I've got this many millions of streams and I've got this many monthly listeners on Spotify. The assertions Nicki was making is, I can fill an arena tour and you can't. But both of them have really huge online fan bases. And Nicki's fans are known as the Barbs, who live in an area called Barb Nation, or are part of a group of Barb Nation. They're renowned for their protection of her.
Literally everything. I love being a Barb. Being a Barb is amazing. Nicki Minaj is my idol. Nicki's been doing her stuff for years. She don't give a F. She's always, out there setting trends, and you gotta have a level of don't give a F to get to where you at.
Molly, we can hear from that clip on Much Music. Being a Barb is a different level of fandom, isn't it? It's another level. Taylor Swift, the Swifties, there's a distinction there.
Oh, absolutely. And what she has is coveted, not only in music, but in politics as well. And that's a base. The base does the work for you. The base is going to lift you up. The base is going to give you visibility. The base is also going to buy tickets. So that is clutch to have in any type of industry, because a base also means mobilization. So no matter what you have to do, if it's downloading a new song, if it's buying tickets, if it's standing up and fighting for you, it's really hard to go after the base. And people do get intimidated by that. Even journalists do. They don't want to go against an artist if there's a base behind it. So that's a smart move for any artist.
And Molly, what you were just saying there about a dedicated fan base, that becomes really relevant when we talk about pure sales. What is that? A pure sale is when a consumer or a fan or a Barb in this case actually purchases an album instead of streaming it. Now, when you compare this to album equivalent sales, you start to see how the music industry works. What's an album equivalent sale? That is when an album is streamed a certain number of times that it equates to a pure sale figure. So if we take Nicki and SZA and we look at their latest projects, that's Pink Friday 2 for Nicki Minaj and SOS for SZA. Pink Friday 2 in its first week had 92,000 pure sales. 92,000 Barbs mobilized, got up and bought the album. For SZA, it was only 7,500 pure sales in the first week of SOS. But when you look at the album equivalent sales, Nicki Minaj had 228,000 versus SZA's 318,000 streams. So overall, SZA's numbers are higher, but the actual engagement from fans for Nicki in terms of purchasing the music, going out of their way, was far greater. And that translates when you start to fill those arenas or you want people to buy your merch. Now, there's another issue with album equivalent sales, is that there's been accusations that there's ways to manipulate them. For instance, if your album gets added into a really popular Spotify playlist like Rap Caviar, those streams still count towards album equivalent streams, but not everybody who's listening to that playlist is in love with that one record you put out. And then we have Nicki and some other really big artists accusing labels of paying for bots to stream and restream albums to artificially boost their numbers. Now, huge labels have come out and denied this, but Molly, this is really an issue of the digital age or the streaming age. You can't quite take the numbers at face value. How are you supposed to know how truly successful you are as an artist?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly those numbers, that's a data point that tells you about what reputation is, but also what influence is. Influence on social media, it really does weight different than actual influence out there. And what it all comes down to is money. And that's where people kind of hang it up or cancel tours or pull back when they actually realize that the real people, the physical people, aren't there. So it's hard to compare an actual person, putting money down, going to a concert, filling an arena, compared to streaming. Visibility is key, but dollar signs are more valid.
Well, there you have it. I'm sure Nicki will keep us very busy on next with whoever she's going to beef next. But now we have to talk about Diddy. I mean, I thought it would be a quick update, but there's actually a fair amount to get into. And that is because I didn't realize how much interesting lawyering takes place when you get to sentencing. And Shaun, you have been explaining this to me, and we could end up with another mini trial at sentencing. The last you heard from me, Diddy was cleared of sex trafficking and racketeering with conspiracy. The racketeering, if you remember RICO, that's the big one. He was convicted of 2 counts of transportation for prostitution and subsequently denied bail by the judge, Judge Arun Subramaniam, who cited his history of domestic violence. Shaun, sentencing is scheduled for October. The number one question is, how long is he going to get?
And that's the penultimate question, isn't it? And that's not something that everybody knows. And I think one of the things that's most fascinating about that is if you were watching at the end of the trial when there was an argument on whether or not he should be granted bail, the United States of America came in open court and told the judge he's looking at 20 years. And I think immediately when I told you, I was like, no, he's not. And then later they had to step back from themselves and basically said, okay, it's actually 5 to 6 years. People get mistaken that they assume that the prosecution or the defense makes a determination on how much time Combs is going to be looking at. Now there is a truth in sentencing, if you will, under the federal system because they want everybody to be treated exactly the same. We have a very specific number that makes a determination on how much somebody's looking at. So the reason that the sentencing is taking so incredibly long from the trial, that's the first thing. If I was somebody, I'm like, wait a minute, he was found guilty how long ago? Sentence him and be done with it. Well, what they do is they have something called the probation department. Our probation department creates what's called a PSR, a pre-sentence report. The pre-sentence report is when that probation department goes and they look into Diddy's background, they look into his past, they talk to potential victims, they talk to potential co-defendants, they look at a guideline range and make a determination of how much time he should be looking at. They get a report, they give the report to defense, they give the report to the prosecution, they give it to the judge. This is what we think he's looking at. Both sides look at it. The prosecution can say, I think that number is way too low. The defense looks at it. We think that number is way too high. The defense says, we want to challenge that report. And so then on the sentencing date, they both can put witnesses on the stand, they can fight, they can argue, and then it becomes another trial. The defense is thinking, based upon the way that I read the guideline range, that Diddy should be looking at between 21 and 27 months on the guideline range. The federal government is saying he's looking at 51 to 63 months on the guideline range. I don't know what probation has said. I think it's closer to the 21 to 27. So realistically, that number can go up and down depending on victims, witnesses, so many people testifying, his history, his prior conduct, if you will. So I think that's a long-about way of saying I don't know the answer to your question.
Well, no, it's a lot clearer, actually, because there's so many things that they're now going to do to argue that he deserves more time, in particular from the prosecution. And some of those, as I was reading, I was going, what the hell? Cassie and Jane are now defined as co-conspirators? I thought they were victims. I've just spent the past 12 months of my life referring to them as victims. And what is going on there? I mean, you spoke to me about that, and that's where the clever lawyering starts, really.
You know, we always talk about everybody thinks being a lawyer is the trial. That's the easy part. The real lawyering happens right now from both sides, that the federal government is trying to come up with, I hate to say it this way, creative ways to get that guideline range number higher. And one of the creative ways is under the guideline range is because he has been convicted under the Mann Act, which is simply prostitution. What they're trying to do is saying if there are multiple victims, multiple sex workers, multiple people who he had trafficked across state lines for prostitution, they can get his numbers to go up. And so if they can make these, I don't even know what to call them anymore because when they got victims, whatever, they can make them co-defendants, then they can increase the number of people that both of them brought across lines. They can say that Diddy was the leader of an organization. They can increase his role enhancement, and they can take that 51 to 63 month number to a higher range on the guideline and say, Judge, he's actually looking at 8 years, not 5 years.
So now we have the 7 escorts now being referred to as victims. And then, yeah, like you say, Diddy was in a managerial capacity, the prosecution have said, or basically organising Cassie and Jane to fulfil that function of transporting people for prostitution. Yeah. If they can't get that over the line and the judge sort of refutes that claim and he's looking at, say, 12 months and he would have already served 12 months by that time and Judge Arun has said that he's going to consider that. Molly, he's walking out of that door. He's not going to jail. What are his next steps? Can he make a comeback? We hear rumors on the timeline that there's a joint album in the works with Kanye. I'm not sure that's what a crisis manager would advise.
Yeah. Well, reputation is certainly currency in the entertainment world today. But I think there's also, in addition to a moral fatigue, there's also just a crisis fatigue. People just get tired of hearing the same stories and hearing the same negative stories over and over again. And they also don't like to get spun. So whether it's by their PR reps or even their lawyers, sometimes there's just a general fatigue. His fans will certainly be there, but Kanye is just a bigger name when it comes to fans and when it comes to, people who will, get behind him. It's different for Shaun Combs, I think. So I don't know, when it all comes down to it, it's based on, do people care as much? There are definitely people who are following this trial, but depending on what he is served, what the time he does serve, if it's low, there's going to be a lot of people who's going to sense an injustice. So there might be a boomerang effect for him there as well, and won't let him get through this.
It will be low. I'm just telling you right now, it's going to be low.
And that will be great for him from a freedom perspective, certainly. But from reputation and coming back, sometimes you wonder, and Shaun, I'm just curious what you think on this. What's there to come back to? It's not as if Shaun Combs was, on the tip of everyone's tongue. He was just notorious now. That's how people know him. So it's going to be very difficult to still keep up that notorious brand when all this was happening. But it will be interesting when the sentencing does happen.
I'm so glad you said that because it was so funny when you sit down and talk to people. It's like, was he really famous?
Yeah.
Like everybody always referred to him as this famous rapper, Shaun. I'm like, was he though? I mean,
he wasn't. Yeah, he doesn't have the fan base. He was more notorious. That's why people know him.
Well, I knew him for dating Young Miami and Lori Harvey, so I guess intergenerational impact through who
notorious.
He dates.
There you go. Notorious, infamous, if you will, not famous.
Yes,
well,
yeah.
And we will obviously be keeping an eye on that October sentencing and bring you what the judge decides then. As if we don't end up in a 6-week retrial, which we all don't want to happen.
Well, no, it would be a couple of days. Let's make that clear. A judge will not let it go on that long. It'll be a couple of days at most.
Well, that makes me feel better, and I'm sure it makes the entire team feel a lot better as well. Thank you so much for breaking those down for us today. Molly, welcome to the pod, and thank you.
All right, happy to be here. Thank you so much.
And Shaun, as always, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Much appreciated, Anoushka.
That was Crisis PR Manager Molly McPherson and our resident criminal defence attorney, Shaun Kent. Don't forget, you can send us your questions on WhatsApp and tell us who you think we should be talking about next. You can find us at +44 330 678 11114. That's +44 330 678 11114. That's it for this episode of Fame Under Fire from BBC Sounds with me, Anoushka Mutanda-Dougherty. Don't forget to subscribe to the BBC Sounds YouTube channel so you never miss a thing.